Hey guys, welcome to the vlog. The song contest is over. I've listened to 250 songs. We got a winner. I will introduce to you the winner tomorrow. They're coming by here in the studio. Can't wait to meet them in person. But there's one thing I learned listening to 250 tracks, and in most of them, or in almost all of them, I had the feeling the kick isn't the right one. The kick is lacking something. The processing on the kick is not right. It's the base of every electronic song, almost of every song that has a kick. The kick is one of the most important elements. It's the one that has the most energy, is usually the loudest, has the most impact, and takes away the most frequencies in the mix. And if you have the wrong kick, it's almost impossible to find a snare or clap that fits to it. It's almost impossible to have still enough room for the bass or make the bass sound good. If the kick is lacking something, the bass can't really compensate it. So today's episode will be all about kicks, how to find the right one, how to process them, how to make them fit to your song individually, and this way end up with at least a 10 to 20% better song at the end.
When I smile, take me back in time.
So first, when it comes to kicks, the most important is your source. If it's a recorded kick that you recorded yourself, it needs to be properly recorded. It needs to be the right kick, it needs to be tuned and all this kind of stuff. But since we make mostly electronic music, I will focus more on sampled kicks and kicks that are made with drum synthesizers. So for these, it is important to have the right sample. There is not much you can do about it. It needs to fit 80% to the song you're working on. So for me, example, personally, I have like my 20, 30 favorite kicks that I'm using over the years that I've collected, tweaked, bounced out again, put into a folder. By the way, I will share today this entire folder with you. Stay tuned for that. These kicks are like the basis for you to start. And then usually I start working on the song. So I have the kick, I have a clap or a snare on 2 and 4, then maybe the chords, maybe the bass, maybe the main melody. And once I get to the point where I start like slightly mixing the song and see if these elements actually go well together, I start changing the kick until I find one that fits to that song. And then it's about tweaking it. But really the most important, it will be 80% of the work, is finding the right sample. There are millions of sample packs available. You can go to Splice or like Loop Cloud or whatever there is available and just try these kicks out. But again, today, first link in the description, just click on it and you will have access to my 41 essential John Sine kicks, the ones that I'm really using. And also the one that I've used on almost every album track is also included in there. It's the very first one in the pack. But let me maybe show you some of these kicks. So this right here is the folder, 41 kicks. The first one, again, is the one that I've used in the album. I still have to rename all of them. I mean, it's a little messy. That's how I collected them over the years. As you can see by the dates, some of them are old, like 2013, but they still cut through. I still use them, so the age doesn't really matter. A good kick is a good kick. Let's get to the part where you change the kick, where you tweak the kick, because even if you have a sample that is the right one for the song, you still need to make it fit to the song. You need to adjust it on every single song. I've never just used the kick and it just worked. There's always some stuff you need to fix and to adjust to make it fit to the song, glue everything together. So let's load up Logic and maybe start with the very first kick, which is at the moment my favorite. So that's a song I've been working on. I've opened up Geist, which I just used as a step sequencer to draw in kick and clap, for example. So at the moment we got 2 kick layers and a clap. Very simple, straightforward. And what I personally like to do, it really depends on the kick, but this usually gives me more control, is to split up the kick in a top layer and a sub layer. So I can control them individually. The sub is so important in electronic dance music. It just needs to sit like perfect in the mix, not too loud, not too quiet. And I also need the click of the kick, because that's actually what's cutting through. That's the stuff you can actually hear on smaller speakers. That's the thing that gives you actually more like the audible thing of the kick. And the sub part is more like pushing you in the club. So, for example, if a kick doesn't cut through but has enough bass, you just increase the volume of the top kind of kick part. You could also do it with an EQ. If the kick already sounds like really, really good and you just need a little more click, then just increase the volume of the top frequencies on the kick. So just to show you the EQing, the kick itself, because this kick doesn't really have a lot of top end, I didn't cut because there was nothing to cut. And the top kick has a very classic curve on it. It's cutting away all of the low end, and both together then sound like this. Just a sub, just the top. So pretty simple. That's something you should try out. Some people even use 3 kicks. I think that's a little overkill to individually control like the midsection of a kick. For me, 2 is totally fine. And then there are some things you should always consider when you use a kick, always. Like every time you have a kick, just think about these things. First of all, of course, is the tuning of the kick. So for example, this kick right here, I've lowered it by 4 semitones because it was a little high, and this really depends on the key of your song. It makes sense to pick a frequency for the kick so that it fits to the key of the song. That's not necessary. I would go with whatever feels the best, because you can't really hear the tone of the kick usually, but what feels best will be in key. It doesn't have to be the root note of the key of your song, but one that is part of the scale of the key you're working on. So for lower right here, by the way, if you don't know what note your kick is actually playing, just take an analyzer, for example, span right here. Let's listen just to the sub part. And then usually where the highest peak is at. So we got here G, around G. Usually it makes sense to pick a kick that is between 40, 45 hertz to 50, 55 maybe. The standard for club music, and I think you will hear that and see that on most songs that you drag into your DAW and put an analyzer on top. The kick will be at 50, at least for all 4 to the floor club music. For future bass, it might vary a little. It might be actually higher because the bass sits underneath, but that's a whole nother topic. Let's get back to the kick. So tuning, of course, like very important. Always check that. And the next one that a lot of people forget, and among all of those 250 songs I've listened for the contest, like at least 2/3 of them didn't really think about it. They just took a kick out of a sample pack and didn't tweak it, didn't tweak the length of it. Because most kicks and sample packs are a little longer than you might actually need, because they want to give you the full sample because they think that you know that you have to shorten it and adjust it to the song. So really always think about making it shorter, removing a little bit of the end. The shorter the kick, the less impact and the less bass and the less sustain, the more controlled it actually is, and the better it will actually fit within the song and the better it will cut through. But don't make it too short, because at the end you just end up with like a click and you lose the bottom end punch. It really depends on the style. For more underground, melodic techno, tech house, I would leave a little bit longer kick. For hip hop, R&B, even longer. And if you go more into the like big room, EDM kind of stuff, if you have a bass playing alongside, shorter. For pop kind of songs, pop, electronic dance music influenced songs, shorter kick. That's like usually like what you will find in most songs. But definitely consider tuning your kick, shortening it. And if you layer a kick, also think about the phase. That's something a lot of people forget. There's usually in most DAWs, there's a layer phase switch where you can switch the phase, and depending, mixing 2 samples into each other, switching the phase might actually sound better. Just try it out. That's always something also to consider. Once you've checked pitch and the length of the kick, the next one is definitely EQing. I already showed you the EQing on these two. I sometimes remove a little bit of the bottom end if I have the feeling the song's too bottom heavy. But usually this could be also done by your mastering engineer, because the kick is usually the lowest element and cutting it is pretty easy. And for every mastering engineer, it's easier to cut bass than trying to boost bass, usually. At least speaking of the very, very low frequencies. For like 50, 60 hertz and up, it's actually the opposite. It's easier for them to boost the bass a little than cutting it. But for the very low end, it's just a low cut. So if they feel that it's too much down there, they will remove it, and usually they will cut below 30 hertz because you can't hear and feel, and most speakers don't play it. So they cut it, and this way they have more room, more energy, and can make the song actually louder. Then a little more advanced, if you now look at the analyzer, there's like a peak right above 200, what is it, like 280. I've removed it now. It's hard to describe, but it's like the knocking kind of part of the kick. And here in this sample, it's a little overemphasized. So usually when I use this kick, later on in the mixing stage, I have the feeling that there's a little too much at that frequency. And usually it's the kick. So this kick actually needs a cut at 300 hertz. I've now picked like minus 11 dB. That's maybe a little much. Maybe 7 or 6 is enough to get rid of that one frequency that is a little overemphasized in this kick. This can happen a lot, especially if you layer kicks. Sometimes you don't pick the cutoff for both top and bottom right, and then there's an overlap in the middle, so sometimes you have to bring that down. But just listen to the kick, sweep through the kick, and try to find frequencies that are too emphasized, annoying, stick out in the mix, and just get rid of them. Pretty simple. That's also something to consider next to pitch and length of the kick. And while we're already at it, to talk about kicks, keep it in mono. I can't really recall any time where I've put a kick in stereo, really. At least like the bottom part. If you have a click or like a head on top, that one can be stereo. This one can have a little bit of reverb on it, but the sub part, no reverb. Don't make it stereo, just keep it mono in the middle. Again, it's like the base of your entire song. And in a club, things that are mono just hit a lot harder. Having your kick in stereo in a club song or in any kind of song is just weird. Like I've never actually heard someone do it. But if you want to be experimental, then maybe try it out and see what happens. But if you want to move people on the dance floor, if you want to make a song that sounds good in a car kind of system for radio songs, keep it in mono. So I think that's pretty much it. I hope this helped you. I hope these things to consider will help you. Again, number one is the sample. So down below in the description, first link, just click on it and you will have access to those 41 essential kicks that I've been using. Those are really the ones that I'm using on every single song. Those are selected for the last 10 years. I've processed them. I've used them on pretty much all of my ghost productions that I did for other DJs. So everything is in there. I hope this will help you to have like an easier start making songs. Just click on it, download it, try it out. You now got the entire weekend ahead of you to just try and implement it into your songs and hopefully advance this way. Also, in the same link, you will have access to PDFs, sample packs, projects, like entire songs picked apart, Logic kind of files that you can open up and just see how I make my music. So have fun with that. We will see us tomorrow back again here in the studio for another full vlog, and I can't wait to meet the guys that actually won the remix competition. Thanks a lot for watching. Sign out.